Hey, 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 what is going on? What is going on, everyone? Coach Derica here. I want to make sure that I am live. Give me just a minute.
On what is
Yes,
going
I
on.
am. All right. Let's go ahead and get going. Hopefully, you guys are having a blessed day. I know a lot of you guys are celebrating Labor Day and things like that, and enjoying the barbecue and potato salad and mac and cheese and all those other things we do on these types of holidays. And I want to go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to try not to be before you all very long. I'd like to say that I'd like to keep these lives within 30 minutes, and sometimes I can do it, and sometimes I go beyond that. So I want to go ahead and get started on today. Today's topic is keeping it real. Okay, keeping it real. So in the prospect or same context of keeping it real, we were challenged in our training with Tunisia to really start to spend the next 30 days operating within our passion, within the areas that God has really anointed and gifted us in. And one of mine is helping people. One of mine is teaching people and speaking to people. And I've always had that. I've always had a desire to do that. I just didn't always do it in the right way. I wasn't always prepared to do it in the right way. And I wasn't always wise enough to be able to do it. But there's always been a certain level of wisdom that I've always had, and I just really didn't know how to use it or how to apply it to my life. And so today I want to jump right into it. I'm still dealing with the series of Out of Brokenness, okay? And so I want to go ahead and get started. So I am going to be looking at my notes. So if you see my eyes kind of jumping from place to place, it's because I have an outline that I want to follow on today. One of these days I'm going to get to the point of having some PowerPoints, but I haven't quite gotten there yet. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is the trauma. I've been talking about trauma. I've been talking about brokenness, but I now want to talk about, I don't know why my light just changed in here. I want to talk about the body's response to trauma. Dang, it got really dark in here. So I think a lot of times people believe that, and people who haven't gone through specific situations, they believe that once you go through a situation that it's pretty much done. You go through it, it's over with. Let's keep it moving. But for people who are not aware or not educated enough on how to get through situations, that's not always the case. That's not always the case. And typically, what ends up happening is that people think that because of the fact they feel that once you've gone through something, then it's pretty much over and you shouldn't really suffer from the residue of it, and neither should the body. People will sometimes place judgment on people who are still affected by what they've gone through. Okay. The body is designed to stay into a state of homeostasis. Okay. What is homeostasis? Homeostasis is basically our body operating well. It's our body functioning at optimum level. Our adrenaline isn't rushing. Our heart rate is normal. Our blood pressure is normalized. There's no stress factors that is causing our body to come out of homeostasis. All right. When you have a response to trauma, people will think that because you're not physically experiencing the trauma again and only mentally replaying or reliving the trauma, people will think that your body does not respond to what you're going through. Well, research has shown that your body does in fact respond to what you have gone through. So if you have ever been I don't know, if you've ever been robbed before, okay, and you've gone through that situation and you're fine physically on the outside, externally, okay? You didn't lose your life. You've healed from that. You've recovered your possessions, whatever the case may be. I don't know the specific outcome of the scenario that I'm using, but flow with me with this. When you are forced to replay the events in your mind, you put your body into a state of allostasis. Okay, allostasis. So you move from homeostasis to allostasis. What is allostasis? Allostasis is basically the reverse or the opposite of when our body is in homeostasis. What happens when we're allostasis? When we are in allostasis, we respond, and they typically say fight or flight, but I want to add a third one to it. It's fight, flight, or freeze mode. Okay. So when you're in allostasis, your adrenaline is rushing, your heart rate increases, your stress factors are up there, right? Your body is fighting to try to get back into a state of homeostasis. Okay. What happens when you are constantly living in your past and you don't really know how to live in the present? What happens is that you are keeping your body in a high state of allostasis. And that actually puts you in a place where now you are suffering from an allostasis dysfunction. Okay. This is a real thing. This is a real thing. Okay. I'm painting a picture here because by the time I'm done here, I'm going to show you the significance and the emergency in getting over your past. Because when you stay in a state of allostasis, you are forcing your body to stay into fight or flight or freeze mode. Okay. I talked before about the freeze mode, but I want to touch a little bit on what happens. So let me give you an example. I was watching a prank show, and on this prank show, they were pranking different people. It was like a fear type of prank. And so this guy in particular, he came out of the restroom. He was in the restroom, and he came out of the restroom heading over to the sink to wash his hands. Thank the Lord. And there was this little girl that had her back turned to him. She was dressed very suspect, okay? And she was in the corner crying. And so he immediately was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong? Are you okay? Are you okay?" Before he could get close to the little girl, the light switched off, okay? And apparently there was an exchange. So the little girl went out the restroom and then someone else came in. So you couldn't see, but you could hear this man going into a state of allostasis, okay? So he had a choice. He was going to fight, he was going to flight, or he was going to freeze. So you could hear him saying, "No, no, no." So someone obviously was messing with him or touching him, right? So when the light came back on, and there was this thing standing there, right? Well, we knew it was a human, but in the prank, he didn't know that in that moment. He couldn't really see what was really going on in the moment. Now, clearly, those of us who was watching the video, we could see that it was someone portraying to be some sort of ghost or monster or something. But it was this person that was standing on stilts that made them taller, dressing all black with all this long black hair. So what he did is he froze. He froze. He went into a state of allostasis. It was too much for his body to handle in that point. And so his brain was not able to send a signal to his body to run or to fight. So instead, he froze. So when he froze, he fell to the ground. Now, when the man fell to the ground, all of a sudden the prank was no longer funny because this man now was in a state of shock. So they had to make sure this man wasn't having a heart attack or something, okay? So my point of saying that is that when you stay in a state of stress, you start to affect your body, okay? We've heard about this. There's been trainings on it. There's been movies on it. There's been research on it. You affect your body. You are in a state of stress and you stay in that state of stress. And now you start to wonder why. You start to have health issues and different things like that go on. Okay. So when your body is in a state of stress, it's looking for something that's going to help it to get back into a state of calm, a state of peace, a state of tranquility. And a lot of times what we end up doing is we look for things that can coat our body, that can help us to get back in that down part. And what a lot of times people do is they start to reach out to coping mechanisms that help them get into that homeostasis. But also, too, when you do that, of course, you know that now you're adding on more trauma and more stress and more consequences of the choices that you make to use to put your body back into that feel good mindset. So moving forward, okay, and I'm looking at my notes, so I want to make sure I stay on task here. So I want to talk about the I'm fine or the is what it is factor. Okay. It is what it is factor is something that a lot of people say. I'm guilty of it. I've said it like several times, several times. And what I really want to stress to you is that we have to stop saying that. Have you ever been in a situation where you know that you're not fine and you know that you're not happy, you know that you're bothered, but you say that anyways, you respond, I'm fine. I'm good. It's all good. I'm good. It is what it is. It's whatever. Well, what we are basically saying, that is a response, okay? That is a response from a place of trauma. That is a response from a place of disappointment, from a place of rejection, from a place of abandonment, from a place of neglect, from a place of mistaken identity. That is a response, whether we realize it or not. It is what it is basically saying that you have no expectation or belief that you have the capabilities or anyone has the capabilities to change your circumstances, and that there's no use trying to change your circumstances. So it is what it is. And that mindset is very, very dangerous to have. So we have to be very, very careful about saying things like, I'm fine, it is what it is, because truth be told, if we're keeping it real, it is not fine. You are not okay if you have not taken time to go through the proper steps to get over what it is that is holding you back. Okay. So let's talk about, what do we do when we use the I'm fine factor or the it's all good factor or the it is what it is factor? We try to cover what we're going through with external fixes that negate away from the internal conflict that we're dealing with. So what are some things that we tend to do when we are in a state of it's all good, it is what it is, or I'm fine? Okay? We eat it. Okay? We eat it. Number one, we eat it. A lot of us eat it. A lot of us will say that we've dealt with weight issues. We've dealt with emotional eating. We are stress eaters. We're boredom eaters. We're binge eaters. That's where a lot of those eating disorders come from, is undealt with issues from the past, undealt with trauma, undealt with stress. We tend to eat it. Okay, so that's the first thing. As you know, when you are feeding the body stuff that it has no business being fed, in excess over and over and over again, because I believe in the 80-20 rule. So 80% I eat healthy, and then 20% I may have some things that I want to have. Like I may want to have some buffalo wings or some mac and cheese or something like that. But you cannot consistently feed your body that stuff, because even though your body feels like that makes it feel good, your body is going to respond negatively eventually. And that's where you have these health issues coming from. You have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, strokes, disease, cancers, diabetes, all these other things that come from our response to trying to coat things externally when we really need to go from the inside out. What is another thing we tend to do? We tend to bury it. We tend to bury it. Okay. How many of you know someone who tend to bury their issues? Act like they sweep them under the rug and they're no longer there. They never happened. Look, I've known people, probably even myself, to be honest with you, because we keeping it real, right? Where you will almost act like something never happened. You can convince yourself, it's your brain's way of suppressing something to protect you and not put you in a state of allostasis. You can convince yourself that something never happened until you are forced to start reliving it. And because we don't want to relive it, we try to code it externally, because we are in fear that if we relive that, it might hurt us. It might do harm to us. And we spend most of our life trying to prevent ourselves from being hurt, when we actually are hurting ourselves and self-destructing ourselves from within. So when you bury something, okay, when you bury something that is alive, that is festering, that is building, that is there, what you basically are doing is you are suffocating yourself from within. So we eat it, we bury it. Okay. What's something else we do? We pack it. We pack it. Okay. We try to pack stuff away, put it in the drawers, put it in the suitcase, dress it up, make it look all nice and pretty, like it's not there also. Okay. We try to pack it away. But what ends up happening is when we go the option of packing it away, is that people start to be required in our life to pick up our heavy baggage. They start to carry our load. We start to make them an accomplice to what we have been through, to whatever has been committed against us or to us. So they start to become an accomplice to what we are doing. We are trying to pack it away. So you'll have people who say, you got a lot of baggage on you. You got a lot of baggage on you. You need to get rid of some of that baggage. You need to unpack what you're going through and what you have been through. Okay. So you'll have people who eat it, people who try to bury it, and people who try to pack it. And now you have people who will try to numb it. So when you get to the point where you try to numb it, now you are seeking certain vices that can put your body, your brain into a state where you don't feel anything. You don't feel anything. So how do you do that? Okay. A lot of people will choose alcohol. Okay. Some people will choose drugs. All right. So when drugs was a point to get you high, now you're using drugs as a point to numb you. You wanted to numb you and to put your body in a state of feel good so you don't feel all that stuff that you are dealing with internally. Okay. So when you're seeking to numb stuff, you're seeking to medicate it. You're seeking to suppress it as if it's not there, so you don't feel anything. All right. The next thing a lot of people try to do as well, too, is they try to sex it away. Okay. So different relationships. Okay. So some people will go from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship, trying to fill a void of brokenness that is within you. You try to code it externally through other people. So you're seeking other people to do the job that only God can do. And he needs to do it from the inside out. But of course, we know he's not going to interfere with our will. So we have to be willing to let him in. Okay. So what ends up happening is that we either eat it, bury it, pack it, numb it, sex it, or we try to cover it. So one of the things that I'm going to use myself as an example here is covering it. So you have people who, and I want to say this before I say this, that because I do it too. A lot of times people will think that in order to cover it or to make yourself feel separated from what you've been through or what you really feel about yourself internally, you go through these stages where you try to cover it with makeup and clothes and bags and shoes and things and material things and eyelashes all the way out to the next state and all of these different types of things, nails and all those types of things, because you don't feel comfortable enough in your own skin, in your own self, because you don't like the reflection that you see in the mirror. So you feel like you have to cover it. Okay. You feel like someone will see who you really think you are. So you feel like you have to cover it. And I have to admit that I was one of those people. I used to try to cover it. For some of you guys, you know that we were just in NOLA last month before. What month was it? It was like part of the end of July and the beginning of August. So we were in NOLA. And prior to, if you go back and look prior to, you always see I always had weave, I always had my nails, I always had my lashes, all of that stuff. Part of that for me, yes, A, I like those things sometimes, but then B, as soon as I would come out, I'd be ready to take off those lashes, right? I wouldn't take off my nails because I love my nails, right? But get the hair out. I just want to be free. Okay. Well, why is it that I felt that I had to do those things in the first place to be able to be considered presentable? Okay. Well, for those of you guys who were in NOLA, you see, I didn't have no weave this time. I wore my own hair. Okay. Short hair, because I didn't think that I didn't think that I could rock a short haircut, but I've always loved short hair. Okay. I didn't do any weave, I didn't have on any lashes, and I didn't do any nails. Okay. And so for me, that was a significant change for me. That was a significant transformation part in my life because I always felt like I needed to have that represented, that cover on, in order for me to present myself as a person that had it all together. So when I got to a point where I was like, I no longer care about what the outside external self says, it's what I feel internally. And when you begin to accept yourself and face the truth internally, you're not so worried about the external judgment because you're comfortable with who you are and whose you are. Okay? So covering it. All right? So I want to say something next here. I have written down evidence of an internal disconnect with you. And that's where I was. It was an evidence of the internal disconnect. I was disconnected. And a lot of us are disconnected with our real self because we've never met our real self. Okay. We've never met our real self. So we don't even know who we are. All right. So when you get to a point where you are ready to face the music and you are ready to keep it real, then at that point, you are going to really ask God to show you who you are. You're going to ask God to show you who you are. Um, he said in his word, that we're supposed to guard our heart. Okay. Out of our heart, the issues flow. But also too, I think a lot of times we tend to think that scripture means that we guard our heart. So we put up all these barriers to stop people from really being able to see who we are, to stop us from being vulnerable and things like that. And that's not really what that means. We want to make sure that our heart posture is correct. Okay, because see, we have to trust God with our heart. That's who we trust with our heart. We trust God with our heart and know that he is never going to put more on us than we can bear. But what happens is we try to do it ourselves and keep God out. And so we take that scripture the wrong way and we think we're supposed to guard our heart and stop people from hurting us. That's not our job. Now, true indeed, we have to be discerning and make sure that we're not allowing people into our life and into our heart that are not supposed to be there. And then a lot of times, in order for us to see that clearly, we have to be willing to change our perception of who we think we are. Because here's the thing, a lot of people will see the good and the power on you before you even see it. And if it's a good person, they're going to try to pour into you and empower you so that they can help you to pull it out of you. But then you have some people who see it like the enemy, and he will try to use it against you. He will try to make sure that you never discover who you are, because he knows that once you discover who you are, then you are going to start to change some things. You are going to start to break some chains. You are going to start to have strongholds broken. You are going to start to break generational curses and turn them into generational blessing. You are going to start speaking and acting from a place of power, from a place of confidence that you were not acting from before when you didn't know who you are, who you were, or whose you were. Okay. So let's talk about, how you basically do that. So what I had to do basically is I had to face my reflection in the mirror. I had to come clean and I had to face my reflection in the mirror. That's what I had to do first off. First off, I had to face my reflection. I had to look at myself for who I was and who I had been. Okay. And this is the part that people don't like to do. I know that because I didn't want to do it. Because see, we have a mirage. We have this smoke screen of who we think we are and who we try to pretend to be as someone who has it all together, who nothing ever bothers them. I'm good. It's fine. I'm okay. It is what it is. But again, we have to change that mindset and realize that it really isn't what it is, because we have the power to change our circumstance. We have a power to separate ourselves from what we've been through and not let it identify us, okay, and let it become a history for us. So once you are willing to face your reflection in the mirror, then what do you do then? Once you face your reflection in the mirror, then now you're at a point where you're going to start to take off the tinted windows, take off the cover ups, and now you're going to ask God to show you who you are. But when you ask Him to show you who you are, you also want Him to show you your heart. Show me my heart, God. Show me my heart. And when He shows you your heart, you have to be willing to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And see, what happens is we'll be willing to see the good. We'll be willing to see a little bit of the bad. Sometimes we may even embrace the bad. But when He starts to show us the ugly, we run. Oh, no, no, no. I ain't dealing with that. No, I can't deal with that. So when you ask Him to show you who you are, you have to ask Him to show you your heart. Then you have to ask Him for revelation. Revelation. Because as He begins to reveal these things to you, you have to have a revelation so that you can move past it. You have to have a revelation so that you can move past it. Once you do that, you need to ask Him to remove your perception. Remove your perception of you and the way that you view and the way that you see things. You'll know if you watch part 1, I talked about the filtering process. You have to ask Him to remove all your filters. Remove all your filters. No filters on this. Once you ask Him to remove all your filters, you need to ask Him to show you your cycles, and you have to be willing to see your cycles. You need to see your destructive behaviors that have been created based off of what you have been through and how you have viewed it and how you have interpreted it. You have to be willing to see your cycles. It's not easy. It's not fun. But it can get exciting, because what happens is as you begin to go through this process of healing and ripping off the Band-Aids, you start to make room to fill those wounds with positive things, with good things, with things that are going to propel you away and break away from your past. And now that becomes history. And so what once was secrets, what once was kept in the darkness, you try to bury it, you try to eat it, you try to numb it, you try to cover it, you try to sex it, you try to pack it. What you once was doing with all these things, now it becomes history. Now it becomes your testimony. Now you're ready to testify. And now it becomes transparency for you. Now you're not worried about what nobody has to say. I'm going to tell my story, because now it's no longer my identity. It's just something I went through. It's now history. And so once it becomes history, now you can get prepared for you to get prepared for your destiny. So once it becomes your history and it's no longer a secrecy and you're no longer trying to cover it up, now it becomes a place for you to get prepared for your destiny. Because see, all of those things have roots. Whether you know it or not, all of those things have roots attached to it. And when it has something rooted, okay, it's rooted deep. It's rooted deep. And I'm here to tell you that only God can help you to pull those things up by the root. Yes, you can go to counseling that'll help you to be able to kind of unpack and understand how you compartmentalize and categorize all those things. But it's God that's going to help you to pull those things up by the root. So once God begins to pull those things up by the root, let me say this. Once you allow God to pull those things up by the root, now you have this gaping wound. This is the part I want you to really, really, really hear me on. Because if you don't do this correctly, then you can very well plant the same seeds that was there before. When you get free from the darkness and the things that have affected you in the past, when you get free from it, there's some things you have to make sure you do. You have to make sure that you have broken those soul ties. You have to make sure that you have been very honest with God and with yourself about the things that you have been through and how it has hurt you and how it has made you feel. You have to be willing to feel it, because I want you to understand whenever you lose something, okay, Whenever something has been taken or stolen from you, there is a process of detachment that has to take place, which means you have to go through a grieving process in order to be able to get over it, because it was a part of you. Somebody took something from you or did something to you, so now you have to detach yourself from the memory or the identity of it, so that you don't go into a place of victimization where you are constantly allowing yourself to be victimized over and over and over again. You have to detach yourself from it, and you have to be willing to feel it so that you can heal it. If you're not willing to feel it so that you can heal it, then what you are going to do is you're going to conceal it. So you need to feel it so you can heal it, so you don't conceal it. Hopefully that makes sense. So now you have this wound. So now you have all this stuff is bad soil. This is bad ground. You don't go and put good seeds in bad ground. You have to let God allow you to grieve and heal from this process. So now what happens? Now what happens? Because the Bible says that he's going to restore all the years that the locust stole from you. I believe that. And hopefully you do as well too. So now what happens is now you begin to see things. This is the exciting part. So you got the tough part. And I'm not going to tell you, I've told you this several times. I'm not going to tell you it don't hurt, because it does hurt. That's the tough part. And the thing is that this is something that you may have to do alone. I had to do it alone. Sure, I had people that, hey, you good? I'm checking in on you. But I had to feel it. I had to feel it myself. And it hurt. I had to feel the good. I had to feel the bad. And I had to feel the ugly. And I didn't like it. But what happened is I made a decision that if I didn't divorce my marriage to my past, then I was not going to be able to accept the new union of my future. Let me reverse that. If you do not divorce your past, then you can never make a new vow with your future, with your destiny. So what I was doing is I was divorcing my future so I could stay married to my past. Hopefully you caught that. You have to reverse it. I was divorcing my future so I could stay married to my past. Once I healed and once I began the healing process, because I must tell you, it's a daily walk. It's something you have to do daily, because see what the enemy will do, the enemy will try to convince you that you're good, that you're straight. You did a little bit of work, you worked on the soul ties, you did all that, and now you're good. And then what happens when something comes back and triggers you? That I'm not even going to get into that deep, because I'm going to cover soul ties. I'm going to cover triggers in another episode, series, live, whatever you want to call it. But what happens when you're not prepared? What happens? He will come and try to reconnect you to old people, old places, old things, old scenarios, old ways, things that you used to do, things that you used to be. He'll try to reacquaint you and get you to commit adultery on your future. Is basically what I'm trying to say. He will get you to commit adultery on your future and cheat on your future with your past. So when I got to the point where I understood that my healing was like a marriage. It was like a marriage. And I wanted to be faithful to my healing. And I wanted to be faithful to my future. And I had to understand that as long as I refuse to heal, and as long as I refuse to forgive and refuse to move on and refuse to stop holding grudges and refuse to be vulnerable and be transparent, I realized that I was making a grave sin to my future. because I was cheating on it with my past. I don't want that no more. I don't want that no more. That's not me anymore. So you have to get to the point where you have to become wise enough to understand that if you do not cut ties with your past and with the people from your past, now I understand some of us that sometimes we can't get rid of everybody. I get that. That's fine. But you have to learn who to give power to and who not to give power to. Because you must understand, sometimes our blessings are delayed for our lack of discipline. Sometimes our blessings are delayed for our lack of discipline. It's a choice to heal. And let me explain something to you. If you say, God is not hearing my prayers, he's not blessing me, these things aren't happening, could it be that you have not walked down the road of obedience and sacrifice and discipline? So therefore, the prerequisite to your desires, to your destiny, very well could be your discipline and healing. That very well could be your delay because you refuse to be disciplined. Obedience is better than sacrifice. So if the prerequisite to your destiny is you being disciplined enough to divorce your past, then what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Because see, I realize that if I can't even be disciplined with this stuff here, and it was a lot, it's a heavy load. Don't get me wrong, okay? Those of you who are reading my book, you see what I'm talking about. It's a heavy load, and that ain't even everything. It's a heavy load. And what you probably carrying is a heavy load too. But it's not bigger than God. It's not worth your future. So when I decided to become disciplined by any means necessary, I will divorce my past. I don't want to be in a relationship with my past anymore. And so now that I am becoming disciplined in my walk towards my destiny, now the blessings begin to flow. They're beginning to flow because now I'm in alignment with what God is saying, what he's doing. Now I'm not seeing it through a filtered lens. Remember, in part 1, I talked about us seeing things through a filtered lens, our filters. So now the filters are removed and I can actually see, oh, that's what that means. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. See, I didn't see it that way before. I only could see it this way because I was seeing it through my filters. I was seeing it through my filters. So when you get to the point where you understand, even in your commitment to be disciplined, you have to understand that being perfect is not the goal, because there's no one perfect. I'm sorry to break and bust your bubble. I used to be perfectionist, try to be perfect with everything. And then when I would fall short of perfection, it would set me back. It would set me back. Because again, as I talked about before, I had emotional developmental delays because my maturity emotionally was filtered when that first trauma for me happened. And for most of us, it's the same scenario. So even though we're adults, we haven't learned how to in a healthy way, process events, situations, devastations, tragedies, disruptions, disappointments, whatevers. We haven't learned how to process that and move forward. We have learned to either fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. And for me, I've experienced all of them. And so when my body would respond with migraines and back pain and all those other things, when I started to go through the process of healing, And some of you who know me know that my migraines and my back pain would be debilitating. Like it would rock my world. But I would still try to push through, but I couldn't understand like why do I keep dealing with this? What is going on? It was because my body was in a state of allostasis. It was allostasis that was doing it to my body. And because my body was in a state of allostasis, I was in the point where I was doing the it's. It is what it is. I was trying to cover it, numb it, suppress it, pack it, bury it, sex it, whatever it may have been. That's what I was trying to do. And then I had to deal with the consequences of all of the it's. You guys, it's time to get rid of the it's. And you'll have to go back and watch the beginning if you didn't catch what I talked about. You got to get rid of the it's. It's no longer it is what it is. It's not. You have to develop a discipline where you're able to go to God in true format, in true self, in true repentance, in true confession, because the devil hates a true confession. He can't do nothing with it. So when you get to the point where you are ready to give a true confession of your true self with a true lens and no filters, yeah, you're ready for war. Remember something. I want you to remember something. David took down the Goliath with the rock. I don't know if you've seen, but I talked about how God sent Elijah ravens to feed him twice a day, meat and bread. Ravens. It just blows my mind. We know Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego was in the fiery furnace and was not burned, not a hair, not a stench, not a smell, not a nothing. We know Daniel was sent into the lion's den. I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Jesus already paid the price. He already paid the price for everything, every sin, every act, everything that was ever committed against us. He already paid the price for that. So you don't have to pay the price for that because he already did it. So we have to stop re-victimizing ourselves over and over and over and over again, because we keep recommitting ourselves to our history. It is our history, and it's time to stop and accept that we are more than conquerors, that we are victorious, that we are his sons and his daughters, that we are healed, that we are loved, that we are prosperous, that we are wealthy, that we are the lender and not the borrower, that we are the head and not the tail. We are powerful. We are everything that our destiny says that we are. We are everything that his word says that we are. And we should not accept nothing less than what his word says that we are. And anytime anyone threatens to try to come and tell you that you are something other than what he says you are, then they need to become part of your history. Part of your history. Because we don't have time to be dealing with people that are trying to keep us back in a place where we fought hard to come out of. We don't have time anymore. It's time for us to stop playing with our destiny. It's time for us, as Tanisha said in her training a few trainings back, it's time for us to look forward and act backwards. Look forward and act backwards. We already have it. We're already healed. We're already delivered. We already are. But we have to believe it. We have to believe it. So what are you going to do differently? What will you do? I'm anxious to see it. I'm anxious to see breakthroughs. I'm anxious to see healing. I'm anxious to see strongholds broken, chains broken. I'm anxious to see curses turned into blessings. I'm anxious to see the people walk in the true reality of who they are, which is God's reality. I'm anxious to see it, and hopefully you are too. You guys, I hope that something I said on today has made sense to you, has resonated within you. And I pray that you guys have a wonderful remainder of the day. I'm gonna go ahead and get up off of here before Stanicia pops on, and I see a signal she's doing a live. So I'm gonna go ahead and get off of here so I can end my live correctly and tell you guys that there is hope. There is there is a brighter tomorrow. And remember, God makes all things new. You are not the exception to the rule. He makes all things new. So you haven't gone through anything or experienced anything that he cannot handle. He makes all things new. So you be blessed, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Peace.